It's early August and I'm busy in my polytunnel sowing and pricking out the next edibles for my garden. These are mostly different kinds of lettuce. Now is a fantastic time for sowing so many different plants, for cropping throughout the rest of the summer, autumn, winter, and even through next spring, some of them. It's also a brilliant time for getting things going if you've got gaps because the slugs have attacked or things haven't quite worked out the way you wanted them to. Some of the seeds that I'm sowing now, such as carrots, spring onions, and some beetroot, I'm sowing directly outside. Some, such as lettuce, chicories, Florence fennel, kale, cabbages, I'm sowing into modules or seed trays in the greenhouse and growing them on as sturdy transplants. You can sow all of these direct outside. I find it a bit tricky in this environment because we've got lots of wildlife, which is brilliant, but quite a few of them like to eat baby seedlings. So I like to put them out as transplants. There's a huge amount you can grow now, and I'm not going to just stand here and read out a list because that will be a bit boring and you'll probably find it a bit difficult writing it all down. So instead, I'm going to have a list at the end of this video. And also there's plenty of information about this on my website if you follow the link here. I like to sow dwarf French beans, bush beans, around this time, not for growing outside. We don't have a long enough season here for them to crop properly outside, but to pop in gaps in the polytunnel where there's plenty of time still, weather permitting, to get a good crop of French beans later in the year when most of the outside ones are coming to an end. These Florence fennel are almost big enough to go outside. They can also be popped in the polytunnel, but I will be doing a later sowing of Florence fennel in September, primarily for my polytunnel growing over winter. Usually Florence fennel survives a winter. If it gets a bit harsh, I cover them with fleece. None of them survived last winter, but that was very much an exception, I hope. A favourite to sow in August is an onion, which is helpfully called Augusta. I get mine from real seeds, and that is a bulbing onion. So you can sow it now and you'll be harvesting it next year. These I'm going to grow outside once they get going. I multi-sow these into modules and they'll go out as little transplants in a few weeks when they're big enough. I'm doing this because of the weather we've been having and the fact that I'm having to do quite a bit of hoeing at the moment, and I don't want to accidentally hoe them or them to get eaten by something. It's surprising actually what eats onions. Rabbits absolutely love them, and fingers crossed we've got no rabbits here. I've seen a hare, which I don't mind, I don't want rabbits, and slugs and snails. They will eat onions. They will eat leeks. How bizarre is that? But they do. So I'm going to put them out when they're a bit bigger into the ground, but you can also direct sow them if you wish. I sowed these chicories, radicchios, a little while ago, and they're ready now for pricking out and growing on, and I'll grow these in modules and then put them out when they're about that big. These are one of my most favourite things to grow. So if you haven't sown your chicories and radicchios yet, get sowing them now. The one I recommend the most is called Sugarloaf Chicory. It's absolutely scrumptious. Sugarloaf Chicory gets to about this big. It's kind of green, like a kind of very tall lettucey looking thing. And the flavour is amazing. You can eat it raw. I love to eat it raw. But you can also, when you harvest it, hard like a cabbage, cut it into quarters and roast them. Oh my goodness, it's divine. Some salt, some pepper, a little bit of garlic maybe, drizzle olive oil. The outer leaves caramelize. It's just wonderful. Yummy in salads and also shredded in stir fries. I put it in pasta. There's a slightly bitter flavour, which is really good for you, which I enjoy. So if you don't enjoy it, you may wish to add a more sweet dressing, maple syrup or honey based. Oh my goodness, it's lovely. And they're more difficult to get in shops. It is these days much easier to get hold of the beautiful red, pink and white round chicories and radicchios that again are fantastic roasted. You can add them to salads, they keep so well. I love those too. So that's why you could see in the tray I have got a ridiculous amount of radicchio growing. It's because I want to make absolutely sure that I get a good crop, that if anything comes along and eats half my chicories before I get to put them out, I'll still have some to put out, because they truly are an absolute favourite. If you haven't tried them, I do recommend it. And some of these also you can force, which means that they'll grow like a chicory, and then in the autumn I'll harvest them. The leaves can be cut off, you can eat them if you wish. They're usually at that time of year I've got loads of other things to eat, so they end up in the compost. And then you put the roots in a pot of compost and store those somewhere frost free and dark. You can just put like a bucket on top to make it dark, and they will form beautiful shoots, chickens. You can see those in posh shops. They're very popular in Europe. Oh my goodness, they're so good. And again, those can go in salads. They're bitter flavoured, they're crunchy. I like them roasted. Won't come as a surprise, will it? Such a treat to have in the winter months. Later in the year, when the radicchios and chicories are all looking mature and fat and gorgeous, harvest them, and they can store beautifully in crates in a shed somewhere relatively frost free, and they should keep then until right into next spring. I've also sown more basil now. That's primarily to go into pots, so that I've got a harvest as long as possible. A lot of that is so I've got plenty for when my tomatoes are ready for preserving, because I do like to preserve my tomatoes with some basil. And I've sown parsley, curly parsley and flat leaf parsley. That's again for the polytunnel and also outside, and some will go in pots. Dill, coriander, chervil are annual herbs that are great to sow now. Really delicious fresh flavours. So they've been sown. Again, some will go in the polytunnel, most will go outside at this time of year. In another month, practically all of it will go in the polytunnel. It really is just so exciting what you can sow now. It's just brilliant. And as promised, the list will appear by magic at the end of this video, and there's also more information and more detailed varieties on my website.